It's been a very wet week so far this week for Lagos, Nigeria's financial and economic capital. And today is continuing to wrap up the week. So a bit of a vehicular snarl and all of that we've seen since Monday continues today. The last Friday, the official final business and markets day for the month of June and for the week. Everyone, welcome to the program. Let's get a bit cozy together in the world of business and finance, live here on Channels Television, Nigeria's news leader. I am Bosin Omofaye. President Buhari yesterday received the committee report on the new AfCFTA, that's the African Continental Free Trade Area program, promising a prompt review and implementation framework of the report for the country to join the new Continental Free Trade Program that has 99% of African countries already in the room. On President Buhari's official Twitter handle, he says, quote, the AfCFTA we aspire to have should therefore not only create wealth for investors, but also jobs and prosperity for our vibrant and hardworking citizens. The benefits of economic growth must be prosperity for the masses. President Buhari went on to say in his Twitter handle that trade is important for us as a nation. Economic progress is what makes the world go round. Our position is very simple. We support free trade as long as it is fair and conducted on an equitable basis. That's part of President Buhari's tweet yesterday, receiving the report from members of the AfCFTA committee. Some media reports that President Buhari will put pen to paper in the new month starting on Monday, this July, for Nigeria to join the new Continental Free Trade. Meantime, PwC yesterday reported a new report telling Nigeria to unlock estimated $900 billion debt capital in order to rev up the country's economic activities and stimulate growth. The new report, entitled Bringing Debt Capital to Life, What Nigeria Should Do, points to huge capital tied down in residential and agricultural estates across the country. According to reports, PwC says high-value real estate market segment of the debt capital holds between $230 billion and $700 billion in value, while the middle market, just one step below that, holds values between $60 billion and $170 billion. And I'm talking about the new very rainy season. We're now getting a lot of wet day and wet nights. Yes, so commercial aviation sector regulators always has issued a notice. That's the NCAA, Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority, telling all pilots and airlines to pay more than the usual attention to weather forecasts as local rainy season becomes intense. According to the NCAA, the agency directs all pilots to recourse to utmost restraint whenever adverse weather is observed or forecast by the Nigerian Meteorological Agency. The NCAA says pilots and flight crews are mandated to obtain adequate en route and destination weather information and briefing from NIMET, that's the Meteorological Agency or aerodrome offices, before they commence flight operations, trying to keep everyone safe there. So let's come to the market street, where Airtel Nigeria is today scheduled to announce the offer price of its initial share offering for the Nigerian market and the offer size. All of this ahead of the planned listing next month. The book building process for the Airtel IPO ends today, during which the shares were set within a price band or range of 363 naira to 454 naira per share. Meantime, the SEC late yesterday issued a very short statement telling shareholders of the defunct Sky Bank PLC not to panic over their unclaimed dividends. The SEC therefore directs you investors to contact Cardinal Stone registrars and STL trustees to process your dividend payments, and all that to keep everyone happy. So the big story today is that the leaders of the top 20 developed world economies, which of course includes South Africa, our policymakers and other invitees are already in Osaka, Japan, for a crucial meeting that focuses on trade fights, Middle East tensions, and the specter of economic slowdown. So what do we have on our calendar for the new month that starts on Monday? Let's give you a sneak preview of that. Nigerian Stock Exchange, as you have heard, is scheduled to admit the new shares of telco operator Airtel Nigeria on July the 4th, after the IPO closure and dual listing on the London Stock Exchange by the telecom company. Meantime, Lafarge Africa shareholders are meeting in about 3 weeks' time, later in July the 3rd week precisely, for their annual meetings, and that meeting is expected to ratify the plans by the directors to sell Lafarge South Africa's operating unit for $360 million to Carry Cement BV, which is a subsidiary of Lafarge Holcim in France. And this new month is when the First Bank had given notice to pay off its $450 million US subordinated note ahead of maturity date in 2021. That's extended the list of Nigerian commercial banks exiting their dollar-denominated debts ahead of their due dates. And a big one from the Tony Elumelu Foundation Entrepreneurship Forum 2019, thousands of African entrepreneurs, investors, exhibitors, and speakers are converging in Abuja, July 26 and 27 for the Foundation's Entrepreneurship Forum. And on Monday, we'll be looking at the crucial OPEC Plus conference. The July 1st and 2nd meeting in Vienna. It's a bit of nervousness ahead of that meeting, pushing oil prices around in the past 2 weeks. No consensus yet between two oil giants, producing giants, Saudi Arabia and Russia, on extension period of production cutbacks among member states. And if you're in the market, you also know the raft of notices being pushed back to the NSE by listed companies in the new month to consider the first half of 2019 financial statements. We have notices already from GT Bank and a few other listed companies. And the face-off between the SEC and Oando Nigeria continues at the Lagos Federal High Court. On July 4th, there will be a hearing on motion for consolidation of Oando's appeal to the court. Then on the 22nd, the court will be hearing Oando's appeal against the SEC directives to remove the company's group CEO, deputy CEO, and top management team. So it's a very lot of actions packed into the new month. You don't want to miss any of that. There's, of course, still a lot more. I'll just try to scratch that for you, put all of you on notice. But today, the calendar of economic data releases by the Statistics Office shows job creation data for first quarter to fourth quarter 2018 is on tap for today, June the 28th. Let's keep our eyes open on the watch to see if the NBS, the National Bureau of Statistics, will keep today's data on job creation first quarter to fourth quarter, Q1, Q2 to 4, 2018, and numbers that will perhaps be released before the end of business. Okay, let's spend a few minutes to talk about the markets. Just rush through this very quickly. The stock market, about 0.5% yesterday after 3 sessions of negative finishing. Yesterday, the market clawed back about 0.5%, just a very small amount, but say thank you to consumer goods and industrial goods making a bit of a comeback. Insurance beat their cousins, the banks. The banks were then 0.1%, insurance up 0.33%, oil and gas back strongly 1.77%. So you had 4 green shoots, 1 red among those 5 big sectors we track on a daily basis. In terms of daily volume, the market was also a little bit better than Wednesday in volume, in value, and the number of transactions. Wednesday was about 3,300. We crossed 4,000 units on on Thursday. So that's part of the story. But let's move on very quickly to the oil and gas story and see where the 1.77% uptick came from. Of course, that came from Seplat, largely because that big E&P company added 6% to the sector index. But Forty Oil went back down a little bit, nearly 10%. Oando lost 1.25%, but you can see Seplat there. Eternal Oil also very smaller, but 8.22%. That's quite positive. Japol also came back by a few notches on the counter, 4.35%, adding that to the day. Check with me the NASD over-the-counter keeping is positive reading midweek on Thursday, 732.04 on the USI reading, 0.63%, and the market cap heading towards 526 billion naira. Volume was also a bit stronger, 2,392 in 22 transactions. That's a little bit higher than midweek as well. And finally, in your fixed income space, a very roaring Thursday, 302.3 billion naira, nearly 400 transactions for the Treasury bills. And of course, you can see a bit of how the Treasuries pieces out there in terms of the discount highs. You can see those maturing 2020 moving a bit higher. This is a bit of a mixed bag here, looking at how we started the week. We'll put some of this into perspectives with Ayodeji Ebo, who is the Managing Director and CEO at Afrinvest. Is joining us via telephone from downtown Lagos today. Of course, it's the end of the month, so everyone is really busy, and we understand that. You need to balance the books, wrap up the books. Even GT Bank announced it's going to close branches in Lagos and outside the financial capital much earlier today to wrap up the first half of the year, because the directors are meeting later in July. So today it looks like a bit of a half day if you look at the market, so we understand. Ayodeji Ebo, thank you so much for coming through via telephone.
Yeah, good morning, Boasing. Thanks for having me.
We appreciate your coming through. It's been a very busy week on the news front in terms of how we started the week on as far as a very big story from the Central Bank of Nigeria, those interventions with a new vision for the next 5 years and all of that. So what's your take on this? We've had this for 5 days. I'm sure you've listened to everybody. You've had some meetings and discussions with your team. What's your take on this very big story to start the week?
I think the first major point to take away from the CBN 5-year strategy report is the recapitalization of the banks, as investors are trying to get clearly in terms of the implication on Nigerian banks. But if you look at it in terms of minimum capital requirements, for us, we feel that the Tier 1 banks will have nothing to fear. For most of them, already have capital that may, in terms of even when it's announced, have capital that will be able to match whatever threshold that may be set. But for the Tier 2 capital, Tier 2 banks rather, we may see some form of, maybe for some of them may have to segment in terms of their license. Maybe some may downsize to maybe a regional bank. That is some of the our initial thoughts on that. Also, in terms of the single-digit target inflation rate, it will be good to see, but it looks very ambitious. We're optimistic and expecting that maybe the double-digit growth rate too also look very ambitious. But notwithstanding, we feel that as the CBN continues its development financing plans, which we feel that will be expanded as we progress into the year. So overall, we feel it's good that positive that at least we have like a strategy that we can hold the governor for the next 5 years to, in terms of assessing his achievement, and also provide in terms of the direction of what the governor has in mind during his tenure.
Okay, Ayodeji, one of the key issues that some of you market analysts and operator, market professionals have talked about is Nigeria's mortgage sector. It's a big problem, and if you look at the PwC report, which came out late yesterday, spoke about a debt capital about $900 billion in Nigeria's real estate. So the central bank governor on Monday spoke about mortgage-backed securities. If you remember, we tried to do this during the market boom years of 2004, 5, and 6 with the stock exchange. Now the governor says within the next 5 years, conversations will be held with you markets, banks and others on how to create a financing option to hold mortgages with financial papers or assets that are tradable on any of the exchanges or perhaps all of them, the stock exchange, the NESD, the FMDQ. Do you think this is something that you market professionals should be looking into or asking for more details from the regulator?
Yes, I think it's about asking for more details, but there are a lot of operators that are already looking at that space because there's a lot of potential when you look at in terms of the housing deficit in Nigeria, still very significant, and about 10 million units. And for what I think the focus for the operators that will be looking at that space would be low-income houses, or low-cost houses rather, because especially for the income earners that have very consistent income or cash flow, for them, if they are able to come up with that structure such that they are able to finance their houses, I think that would really help a lot. And some of the existing mortgages can also now be restructured to create liquidity so that it can now be used to refinance new mortgages. So it's something interesting that would expect in terms of our regulators to come up with policies that would ensure that this works effectively and for us to get a very clear path in terms of what exactly the regulators, especially the CBN, wants to do regarding this. Because when you check in terms of the books of the banks, based on the deposit maturity analysis, for most of them, when you are getting to like 180 days, you see that most of their deposits, over 60 or 70% of their deposits have maturity of about 180 days. So for the banks to look at lending into the housing sector or focus on mortgage is going to be a very tough one. It's long-term capital that can also help to open up the opportunity within that space.
A final one and very quick one with the SEC having a new board and a chairman and everyone else in there. I'm sure this is music to your ears. All of you who are CEO of securities firms are happy with this. What's your take on this? How do you think this team should move forward and very quickly?
Yes, it's a very positive development, and we feel that with the implementation, with the inauguration of the new board, we should see more implementation of policies in terms of how confidence will be provided in this market. Investor education is also key. Investors' protection is also what the SEC will be focusing more on, as well as coming up with new ingenious ways to attract more investors into this market, and as much as possible also protecting their investment. So we feel that it's a good one for the SEC. It will be they will be able to take in terms of initiatives faster. They don't have to go to the Minister of Finance for approval. So with that space, we feel that we should see more innovations and more policies that should be published or should be worked on by the regulators.
Ayodeji Ebo, CEO at Afrinvest Securities, thank you very much. Have a great day and enjoy your weekend. When we come back after the break, we're talking about small and medium enterprises, part of what the central bank governor talked about on Monday. But again, some folks think funding is not just the only thing that the SMEs need. So we need funding, but beyond the funding, what else do we need to do?